Already a better sign. Didn't say that last week. All right. Yes.
Yes.
Working. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Well, welcome, NextOppSocial family. Welcome to another live chat discussion here on the NextOppSocial channel. I am Richelle Wright Wilson. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Buford. And today we're also joined by public speaker, bilingual poet, visionary empath coach, and girls advocate, Ber-Henda Williams. So before we jump into it, if you're watching with us here, either live, on the replay, please make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an interview, a live, and never miss out on these incredible discussions that we get to have here every week at NextOppSocial. So let's get into it. Welcome, Ber-Henda. Thank you again for joining us here today. We're super excited to talk to you and about your journey and learn more about you. So let's jump right into it. Tell us more about yourself, your background, and because we're about entrepreneurship here, what caused you to fall in love with being an entrepreneur?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for opening this space up and having me on as a guest, first and foremost.
Yes.
And so my journey, I mean, I feel like for most of us, it's never a straight path. At least for me, I use an I statement. It was not a straight path. I had a couple of career incarnations before I finally accepted that being an entrepreneur was the right thing. I think it was something that I fought for a while.
Yeah.
And when you don't necessarily have examples of a thing that are tangible, you might feel that it's out of reach for you, that it's not possible for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I've spent time, the bulk of my career was spent in education as a secondary educator. I spent a little bit of time in the nonprofit world and some time in the corporate world. And what I learned, I mean, there were lessons in all of it. And I think being in the corporate world provided me structure. The nonprofit world provided me a certain degree of empathy and compassion. And being in education definitely gave me endurance. So if you have spent any time at all around teenagers, yes, they will take you to levels in your in your personality. They will, if you're a person of faith, they will increase it because that's how they stay alive. But I just found that in our structures and our institutions, there's in many cases limited thinking. And when you're an entrepreneur, you really have to be slightly delusional in that you have to see things as if though they were. So you can't look at things. I mean, every day is different. A day can make or break a sale for you, a connection, a relationship. So you're really operating really on sheer faith. And many entrepreneurs also go with their hunches. I call it intuition or discernment. So you have to move in a different kind of way. And that's not for everyone. So if you're jumping on the entrepreneurial, bandwagon because it's like the new black or the new sexy thing to be, you're not going to last long. This has to be something that you're called into. And really, it's a mission, it's a calling. So it's something bigger than you, bigger than yourself that invites you into to running your own business and serving people. Essentially, you're a servant. So it's not just about you. And I think that Instagram and some of these other platforms can have us thinking that, oh, it's just so easy and, sort of the spoils of entrepreneurship. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are spoils of entrepreneurship, the lifestyle and freedom that you receive, but it really is a mindset. And for me, it really is being diligent and really judicious, like with my time and my resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to unpack that a little bit, Brandon. You said some really, man, you shared a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that was
perfect. I could write like 4 or 5 blogs based on that snippet. My goodness. But he said a couple things that really caught my attention. If I to create a headline for this conversation, I would call it structure, endurance, and empathy.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that was cold. That's cold. You could have it for like 2 weeks and I'm borrowing it
Okay.
afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
But what you shared was really important. I mean, entrepreneurship is a skilled trade, right? And you do have to have structure, endurance, and empathy to succeed. Those are key ingredients. And so it's fascinating to me that you realize that. And you thought about acquiring those characteristics that would be required, among other things, to be successful. But still, there had to have been a point, right, where you just said, it's time. I've drawn the line in the sand, right? Because it's not like you were born entrepreneur. It wasn't like you were, I hear people say thoroughbred entrepreneurs. I wonder if that really exists sometimes. But in any respect, it's not like you're pretending to be that person. You're saying, look, I wasn't necessarily ready for it. I was fighting it. I didn't want to have any parts of it. And you sought out the traditional lane, so to speak. But there had to have been a point where you drew the line in the sand and said, okay, it's time. What prompted that decision? And then once that decision was prompted, once you were prompted to do so, what are the steps you took to launch your business?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that because I failed 3 times at coaching. Failed. And I think that, are those, those folks who like to wax philosophical. No, you didn't fail because you failed, you got back up again. And it sounds trite, but it's true. I mean, I did get back up again, and I learned some things along the way. And I think for me, the line in the sand was happiness. It just boiled down to just sheer happiness. And again, it might sound trite, but like, who gets to be happy? And I'm like, I do. You do. You get to choose your well-being, your happiness. I didn't like in education the system that the school to prison pipeline. I'm not comfortable with that. So we can hang a nail on the power of girlhood. So that's in essence sort of an answer for me, because statistically speaking, we see school to prison pipeline being filled with Black males. But according to a Georgetown review, there is a steep increase of Black and Latina females heading toward incarceration for a number of reasons. So that is super important to me. The way our structures are set up. I'm a creative person, so it was mentioned that I'm a poet, so I needed spaces to really be myself, and along the way discovered I'm a multipotentialite. So that's a multi-hyphenate, multi-passionate person. We might commonly know it as a Renaissance person. And in our current landscape, many coaches or entrepreneurial incubators will suggest that you kind of pare down and focus on one thing and let that one thing be. And I just, for my souls, I can't do that. So the drawing a line in the sand was, there's no space that I can be myself except for the space I create.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's interesting because, we hear a lot about, like you had said, that you need to pick one path, you need to get focused on that, you need to do that one thing really well before you can add on more. Talk to us a little bit about how you juggle being a multi-potentialite, how you are still thriving and succeed in a way when every avenue is telling you to not do all of these things.
So, I mean, quite honestly, for me, I'm a person of faith. So, my personal relationship with God dictates everything. Like, I would be disrespectful to the architect if I said, I'm going to hide parts of myself. I'm not going to be the way that you intended me to be, the way that I was created to be. So one of the things that I would definitely say for anyone who's listening, who is a multipotentialite, I want to be very clear. There's a difference between a multipotentialite and a hustler.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my city. I love Detroit. Don't get me wrong. But our whole sort of moniker is Detroit hustles harder. Mm-hmm. And I think there's this idea that the more things you do, the more revenue you're going to bring in. And that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
It's following the passion, the bliss that brings things in. So, you know, for example, you'll never see me doing anything remotely related to finance or accounting because that's not me. But just to make a quick buck, I'm going to become a certified public accountant, you know, for tax season. So that's how I make my money for this. And then, you know, don't get me wrong, I love fashion, hair, nails, makeup, but then I'm going to be a hairstylist and I'm going to be like, if it's not aligned, if it's not real, you know, I'm passionate about it, it's just a buck, then you'll always be hustling, you'll always be chasing if your bottom line is simply the dollar. Mm-hmm. So multi-potentialite means that these really are things that you are truly passionate about. They really fill you up. You feel lit up when you're engaged with it. And the other thing is not doing it by yourself. Like I'm not ashamed to say I have a virtual assistant. I have a board that supports the power of girlhood. Without those things, I don't know how I would be able to function. And it's funny because I was listening to, I can't remember. I listened to like a lot of YouTube, like for inspiration and to get your mindset, because that's really an important thing with entrepreneurship. But it said that rich people get help. They don't do everything by themselves. And I would say it's a consciousness. So those who are rich in consciousness know that they don't do things alone. You can't do things alone. When you have a poor lack consciousness, you feel like you got to hustle, you got to grind, you got to go out, you got to make it happen. And to be quite honest with you, one of my mentors, she doesn't advertise. Yeah. She doesn't post on social media. They come to her, contracts come to her. And I think she's been doing this for over 25 years in this way. Mm-hmm. It's like you say their name and it's like, oh. So I feel that, not to say that you don't have placeholders. I think that it's, you know, you can have your landmarks. Your social media is a landmark. It's, you know, it's a touch point. It's a place of engagement. Definitely, you know, your website, that's a place of engagement. And your newsletter, that's really your community, where, you know, people come and gather to hear what you have to say, or, you know, follow you because they just really believe in you. It's the energy you put out. So I would say that to do it and to do it well, you can't do it by yourself. Please don't even attempt to do it by yourself, and get really focused, not so much on the one thing, but get really focused on what you value, like what's important to you. And then the things that just the things that you engage in that just light you up, that just make you, you know, super happy. I mean, when I watch, you know, the two of you, the way you all engage each other, the way you engage this place, I can tell this is something that you're passionate about. This means something to you. And something really interesting that you all say in your content is that, why are we doing this for free? Like, why are we giving this away? Because what does it hurt to give? Mm-hmm. And if you're in a prosperous mindset, you know that giving is the ultimate way to receive, because you're just giving it away, and it's a reward within itself, that it touches someone, impacts someone. You know, really and truly, that's how I built my business, is really through relationships, not going to networking events. We'll get to that in a moment, but I don't like them. I do not like networking events. But it's really the impact of how you make people feel. They will always remember how you make them feel. Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to unpack this just a little bit, because once again, I have enough content to write 4 or 5 blogs here. But you said something that was really important, right? I firmly believe that you can do multiple things, but it has to be in alignment. And you said that, right? In alignment with your passions. But I would also argue in alignment with your competency, because unless you're very, very, very passionate about something, you're not willing to be competent enough really to have a value proposition that people want to pay for, right?
Right.
And I also firmly believe that people are mission-seeking missiles at the end of the day. We're mission-seeking missiles. And part of the reason why having alignment, part of the reason of knowing where you stand and knowing what you're passionate about, what you're for, is because that's how you attract help, right? That's how you find people who are willing to buy into your project when you're first starting out. You may not have a dime to your name, but people cling on and want to support your business anyway. Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind, okay, right. Because I think this is a very important piece, because business owners they'll toil and they'll work. I mean, quite frankly, they'll work their asses off and can't, quote unquote, can't find people who are willing to work with them. And this is a key piece to that. So I really want to do a deep dive in that. If you could kind of elaborate even more so.
Yeah, ask for help. I mean, I think we are so proud that we want to, again, it's that imaging thing, look like we have it all, know it all, be it all. And it's like, if you're in your first year of business, would you expect an infant to walk? No. Would you expect an infant to feed itself? No. That is a horrible expectation. In fact, if you treat your business like a child and look at the stages of growth and development in that same way, you'll be way more compassionate and gentle with yourself. And you'll be way more compassionate and gentle with your business if you look at it like a child. So in the first 5 years of your business, are you going to rush to, feed, said child steak? No, it can't digest it. It doesn't have teeth to chew it. So no, you wouldn't do that. So what are the foundations? So for your baby, in your business, what is your baby's bassinet? What is the feeding schedule like? How often do you need to be feeding? What kind of, foods do you need to be feeding your baby? So I would say, like, in your first year of business, some people like to kill themselves with the website. I don't know what it is with the obsession with the website, but it's like we are obsessed with getting this fancy, website with all the bells and whistles. It comes over and talks to you, and you spend thousands of dollars on a web presence. Why? If nobody knows who you are. And then we get caught up in whatever the gurus of business are saying, SEO is like the big thing, like, you want to get and I'm like, how about one-to-one building? I don't care what anyone says. I mean, I went to school for business. I graduated from Wayne, so shout out to Wayne. My marketing professor, Dr. Beltramini, said your best form of marketing and advertisement is word of mouth. And I don't care, with all the things, touch points that we have now, word of mouth, quite honestly, is still. So build your community, build, what is it? The like, know, trust factor. Build your credibility up. If you're, first starting out, you're going to be giving a lot of stuff away for free. Just building relationships. And then you can start to, with the charging and, the premium rates. And, I've raised my rates, even in the middle of a pandemic. I raised my rates. But when people know who you are, they trust you. Then you can make the asks. And when people see passion, for many years, when I first started, like the Power of Growth, I didn't know anything about necessarily running a nonprofit. That was new to me, but I asked for help. I asked for people that knew what they were doing and that had a track record and that had trust within community. I asked them to help me, and they said yes, because I really believe that people are far more discerning than maybe they give themselves credit for. I mean, when somebody's lying to you or, kind of BSing you, it. But when you're just honest, like, look, I need help. I don't have a budget to pay you, but this is what I can offer. And I think that's the other thing too. What do you have to give? Even when you think you don't have money, you have something to give, Relationships are symbiotic. They are not one way. That's true in our romantic relationships, and that's true in our business. So be ready to give. And most of the time people will say like, no, they don't want anything, but it's still, again, the interaction that people remember. You know, they offered, sponsorship. They offered advertisement. They offered, something. They invited me on, as a guest. Again, the value added. You always have something to give.
I like it. I like it. So you use this metaphor of a baby, right? Yeah. But you said something earlier, because it can kind of cut both ways, right? Sometimes because you love your baby so much, you may not be willing to exit the relationship with the business, right? And you talked about you talked
Been
about
there.
The idea,
yeah.
You talked about the idea of starting up 4 businesses beforehand and things not going your way. Man, aside obviously from the lack of monetary reward, right? The business isn't profitable. It's just not profitable. You got to do what you have to do. But when did you know it was time to cut ties with one of those businesses? And what lesson that you learned in that process?
Bandwidth. When I saw that I couldn't give it the time and attention that it really needed. And so for my multipotentialites out there, if you're running multiple businesses, I would say realistically, in your infancy, I mean, unless you're bringing in money like Beyonce or Oprah, or then you can have multiple ventures. But I would say like really no more than 3 ventures at a time. And then even with those ventures, you have to look at seasonality. What season are the businesses in? And you probably don't want to do a triple launch. I would not advise that. So, I would say for the power of girlhood, like right now, this is our busy season. So we're getting ready. We're ramping up for the International Day of the Girl. That's in October. And those take partnerships for that to really galvanize and get the capacity needed for that. And that's not to say that I don't cry and that I'm borderline pulling my hair out about it. And it's like, sweet Lord, baby Jesus, please come through with the budget. I'm not saying that those things don't happen, but I would be irresponsible if I tried to. I'm bilingual, so it would be irresponsible for me to be out, chasing contracts for translation when I know that like this is the busy season for the power of girlhood. I'm a coach. I'm scaling my business, and I've really decided that one-on-one is great, but I like group programs better. So that's an infrastructure, now that's different. And after I get off the call with you all, I'm working with a consultant to help me up level how I present things online. So again, you kind of have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. And I've put, poetry to sleep. I used to run a poetry series. I brought it back, but when I brought it back, instead of doing monthly, I did quarterly. Again, bandwidth, still same level of impact, still same level of love. But if I want the quality to be there, I needed to do it in a quarterly versus doing it monthly. And again, like I said, with even my own coaching business, I like group programs better. So, chasing one-on-ones, I mean, that's fine. But where the heart is for me is in circle. I love workshops. So it's like, again, knowing even within your business, like what you like to do. And so those things that you don't like to do, or you're not, like you said, you don't have the aptitude for, give it away. Hire a VA. If you can't hire a VA, you can find an intern. Or then there's people, I just know that when you're passionate, you kind of give off a frequency, a light where people are like, you know what? Let me help you. I've been in like coffee shops or at the gas station and meet people. And that's the best way it works. Well, you know what? I know this person and knows this person. Take my card, call me. And I'm like, what? And people just want to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was expecting Rochelle. It looked like she leaned forward. She was going to
go ahead.
No. Like I said, once again, man, you have like all this blog content that I mean, now we're up to a dissertation. All right, so you mentioned something that I don't hear a lot of. You mentioned something I don't hear a lot of people talk about so often, right? It's kind of like considered an old school approach, right? And that is a newsletter. So I had to go there, right?
Yeah.
Because setting up a newsletter is more than a notion. Okay, that is truly an exercise, a project in itself. If you don't mind, talk to the audience a little bit. Why a newsletter? How has having a newsletter impacted your business? Why do you see it as something that could be valuable for an entrepreneur?
Sure. So some people, I used to feel, oh my God, a newsletter, like this is so hard. Oh God, I can't do it. But because you're trying to pack it with so much stuff, just write a personal note to your community.
Right.
Get feedback from your community. Like, well, what is it that you want to be talking about? I try to keep to the pulse because with my community, I work with empathic, mission-driven entrepreneurs, okay, with the social justice arc. So I'm staying to the pulse of current events. So I'm helping to support those who are highly sensitive people to manage their emotions in very charged, the very charged times that we're in. And for business owners, you may hear, don't talk about religion and don't talk about politics. Well, my thing is know your community. I have a community of all faith traditions. I have a community of all ethnicities. If you don't like what I'm talking about, you can opt out.
I like it. And this is something that's come up repeatedly as I'm listening to you. This is a stream. When I'm listening to you, you've done the thing of creating literally your own ecosystem. It's almost like you're literally creating your own universe, if you will. And you're pulling people into your world who, quite frankly, either could benefit from your services or, like you said, it's a symbiotic relationship, people that you derive enjoyment for working with, right? And I would argue right now, especially given what's going on because of the pandemic and how our social ties and networks have been disrupted, that's so invaluable. It's so invaluable. And of course, this newsletter piece, you're absolutely right. I'm glad you mentioned it. I know I've struggled with that personally. Is, do you just put out the little note, hi, everybody, I'm here. I'm breathing today. How about you?
You know what?
What are you interested in?
It's just that, I'm serious. It's just that simple. I think we overcomplicate the newsletter. And, to get, talk shop a little bit. I mean, when you're first starting out, MailChimp is pretty easy. Then MailerLite, and you can do Aweber, and, if you're real fancy, you can do the Infusionsoft. But it's just the touch point. Like, if for whatever reason social media were to go away, how are your people going to find you? How are you going to stay in touch? You can download an Excel spreadsheet, put that thing on a jump drive, and your community can go with you wherever you go. And again, it's a word of mouth, sort of, thing. You grow it. Like I said, this is my third attempt at coaching. And I would say this is the most successful attempt because I learned from the mistakes, and touch point and engagement is super important. I would even say the newsletter is even more important than your website. It's just my humble opinion, but that newsletter is more important because, again, it's engagement. You can have a pretty website and it can be glossy, but if people aren't in your heart, you're not connecting emotionally with people. It's like, so what? This is why when we look at certain brands like, Coca-Cola, the fact that Sears Roebuck is closed, for many people, it was a devastation. Why? Because we know Sears, it's like a household name. We all have stories of going to Sears at some point. If you're from, the Metro Detroit area, how important that is. JL Hudson, Dayton, these were institutions in our city. And when they go, a part of us go.
I like it.
And to me, that's like the true testament of a company, of a brand, is that people feel emotionally invested in who you are and what you do, because you've had an impact. There's memories associated, hopefully good ones, that are associated with you and your customer, your client.
So with the work that you do, especially dealing with empathic people and highly sensitive people, and given just 2020, the way that it is, right? And every week, I'm sitting here thinking about, with the work that you do and the mission behind it, which stays very strong and very true, have you found yourself having to pivot, adjust, or have to be even more, I don't know, a different approach in how you are working with your clients or working with, because I know you do also the other businesses too. Have you had to pivot how you approach people? Have you pivot how you run your businesses or whatnot, just because of the nature of what you do? It is so sensitive to what happens day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say that we have had to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Pivot would imply that you can go back. There's nothing to go back to.
Right.
Like I've had to like get in the the starship and like hit the warp speed. Scotty's had to give me all he had to move me light years, kicking and screaming, because I'm a very fixed, person. So I'm a Taurus, so I'm like fixed, and it's like, no, I will do it this way and I will keep doing it this way. And again, running a business, you have to be flexible. And sometimes I'm not so flexible. I'm not so flexible. So this pandemic has taken me kicking and screaming into like the 21st century. And, some of the things that I'm doing now, behind the scenes, these are things that I would have never, had this not occurred, the pandemic not occurred, I probably wouldn't be doing. I would still, have a lot of the contracts, the quote unquote, like the bread and butter, pieces. But I've had to like, okay, this is what you said you signed up for. I've had to really go all in. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we don't always go all in, and it's nothing against people that have, day jobs as they're, using their day job to help build their business. But at some point, your business can't be a hustle. So if you're declaring that you really want to be an entrepreneur, then draw a line in the sand and decide, I am an entrepreneur. And for those who are into like affirmations and the visualization, like you have to look at yourself in the mirror every morning and say, I am a 6-figure or multi, 7 or whatever, that really sees in your head about who you are. Because here's the thing, it's not just about the money, it's about the impact that you get to make. As an entrepreneur, there's a huge dedication you can make to philanthropy. Again, like I said, when we look at some of our institutions and our infrastructures, when we look at, especially working in the nonprofit sector, a lot of it was grant dependent. If you don't get this grant, then the work doesn't necessarily, salaries don't get paid. And then there's this expectation of martyrdom that, you have to work really hard for a little, because it's noble. And suffering, that's not noble.
Yeah.
When you are put in a place where you have the means and the responsibility to end the suffering, because that's the very definition of compassion. The compassion is to see another person suffering and the willingness to do something about it.
I can. So, I got to unpack something you said a moment ago.
Okay.
I like, you said something that caught my attention. This ideal of having to make changes, right? And I mean, this is huge, particularly in Detroit metro community. Like you said, a lot of businesses are gone and they're not coming back.
Yeah.
And there, unfortunately, are a lot of businesses that have not closed their doors yet, but those doors are going to be closing soon. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with the inability to adapt and to change. And actually, that should have been my second question. But I do want to talk about that a little bit, about the things that you've had to do differently in order to get through and not only just survive, but thrive in this pandemic. But you also said something else that caught my attention. That was the ideal that you got to go in, right? That you have to eventually have to sell out in your business. And for me, when I hear that, I think about the phrase, you have to be willing to give up to go up. And that's the biggest fear I think people have. Like, if I go in on this business, what do I have to give up? What's going to be the price in order to grow this thing to the point where it becomes an organism, begins to function, and is able to take care of my family and help me level up and take care of others? What are the things that you had to give up in order to go up?
Fear. Likability. Not everyone's going to like you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you may have friendships that, you know, span decades, but
Mm-hmm.
when you shift your mindset to what's required to be an entrepreneur, those relationships may become obsolete because you don't have time to gossip.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have time to complain.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have time to be in relationships that don't fully honor who you are. And the way you speak, it can sound, that's one of the best pieces of advice that I also got from a mentor. And that's the other thing too, get a mentor or two or three. He told me, he said, Ber-Henda, you have to be slightly delusional in order to be successful, because you have to keep your mind open in a visioning space of what's possible.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are things
That's
that
powerful.
That's
Yeah.
what you have to give. I mean, there are some things that you're going to have to give up, and the expectation that I see a lot of entrepreneurs. Well, my friends and family aren't supporting me. Whose vision is it? Is it theirs or yours?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if you keep harping on who's not supporting you, you're missing. It's like missing a sunrise. You're so into whatever your situation is and the complaining, and the sun is coming up. And the sunrise, I think, is probably one of nature's most beautiful gifts to us, and the sunset, to watch it. But you're missing the whole beauty of nature because you're in this vibration, this frequency of complaining, and you're with other people who are complaining. And it's like, you're gonna have to get off the bench and get in the game. What are you suiting up for? To ride oak the whole season? No, get in the game, get in your business. And it's going to look different for each person, but I really feel like it's also an inner work as much as it's an outer work. And it does grieve me to see small businesses close, especially brick and mortar, because again, they're a fixture within the community. And it's super hurtful to see it. But the thing is, if it's in you, then you just take it. Okay, it's a minor setback. We're going to go back into the laboratory, and we're going to come back swinging. I'll do what I have to do. It's nothing wrong with taking a pause. A pause isn't a quit.
Yeah.
Get back out there.
So I want to be mindful of time. I know we're going to wrap up here. So we should try to end on these more fun, lighthearted, inspiring notes, right? Not that this wasn't inspiring in any capacity, right? So we have a couple of questions. So first question is, if you could define yourself with a superpower or a spirit animal, what would that be? Either or. We give you an option of both.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to go with a superpower. So as an empath, I think our gift is the ability to feel deeply, but also sense the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of another person as if it were our own. So I'm going to go with Jean Grey. I would have that telepathic move objects with my mind. Give Professor X a run for his a run for his money.
Yeah, I love
So yeah.
And then you gave us so many things that we could probably spend hours talking about on their own individual areas from what we talked about today. But if you could leave our audience and leave the, entrepreneurs and individuals who are, watching this, what one very important lesson would you want to leave them with in regards to entrepreneurship? It's hard to sum that up.
I would say this: authentic is better than perfect.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it all at one time. Take a step back and look at the inner workings of your business versus like facades. Like, again, we get caught up in the website and the shares and likes on social media. Get back to the heart of what it is you do and why you do it. And that really does just shift everything. Just be true to yourself, be true to who you are, be true to that mission, and the support will come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Ber-Henda, what is the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to reach out, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to continue this discussion with you, for sure?
Absolutely. So they can reach out to me through my website at BerHendaWilliams.com, and that's BER-HENDA Williams.com. I'm all over social media, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can drop me an inbox. Shout out to my parents for a unique name. So if you can't remember any of that, you can Google me. I'm the only one in the world, and you can connect with me that way. I would love to, really support with vision and infrastructure. Like, those are my two jams. I'm really good at that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again. We're absolutely gonna have to have you back on again to dive deeper, as unpack more, as Joanne says, because there's so many good things and so many things that we would love to talk with you more about. So thank you again, everyone who's watching. Share this with anyone you feel could gain from it. Reach out to Ber-Henda. We hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe, and we will see you all next week.
All right. Thank you so much for